our last and final chapter. You should celebrate. You did it. You fought through this weird part in history, and you should truly celebrate because you've made it this far. And when our kids with exceptional needs get to this point in life, when they're transitioning into something that's new for them, it's a huge milestone. And so congratulations to you as we move forward into this last chapter of talking about students with exceptional needs and how they transition to adulthood from their education setting. So how I would have started off today with you in the classroom is I would have made you complete a little activity on things that make you special. There's a list of 30 things, and sometimes people have a really hard time giving themselves props for things that make them individually special. But it's something that's good and it's a big confidence booster. And so it's just an activity that you can do. Like I said, you can show pictures with kids. You can make them write it out if you're wanting to do a writing assessment with them or writing activity with them. But truly just letting people know that there are things about them that make them special. All right. So I want you just to think a little bit about when you were in high school in grades 9 through 12, and some of you that was just last year. What did you do during that senior year, or maybe even your freshman year? Some kids start as early as their freshman year. What did you do during your years in high school to help prepare you for where you are now? Just think about that. And then think about the skills that were necessary for you to get to where you are today. Maybe you had to take the ACT and get a passing score. Maybe some of you needed to go after grants, scholarships to get to where you are today. So you had to apply for them, and you had to have all that background knowledge to get to the University of Sioux Falls. So IDEA, which is again the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, talks about transition services for students with exceptional needs. In 1983, the amending of IDEA Public Law 98-199 is where funding services came out to assist students to transition on from their high school experience. And there was 3 different levels of support for students with exceptional needs. There's just that generic support, okay, which is a bridge in itself. That generic support is helping students to fill out applications, helping them get amendments for those tests that they needed to take, so on and so forth. Then there's another level of support called time limited, and this is for certain agencies that come into play. There's a whole bunch of different agencies that can assist families and students with exceptional needs that are offered to them through the school district, and then sometimes they're offered just through different funding through whatever state the student lives in. And then there's that ongoing support. And students who have disabilities are provided with different support services going forward. Here at the University of Sioux Falls, we have the Academic Success Center, and this is an ongoing support. Students who have needs are able to work with them to get certain accommodations even at college. So that's a fantastic thing that students can continue to go on to that higher education with certain accommodations. They're not exactly like they were in high school, but there's still that level of support. So transition is truly a results-oriented process that helps the student in their overall achievement as they grow up into be an adult. All right, so just want you to think a moment. When do you believe that transition planning should begin with students when they are in the K-12 facility? Think about that for a moment. Okay. So when we're looking specifically with students who are on IEPs, planning should begin no later than the IEP that will be in effect when the student turns 16. 16 is the main age level for a majority of the states. However, there's always exceptions to the rules. And some states require it to be in effect right when they turn 14. Okay, so 14 or 16 are the general age limits. Oftentimes those ages are when students are getting into ninth grade, but some states offer it as early as that 7th grade planning. And why transition has to happen is so that we can make sure that students are set up to be successful in their life post school. Okay, we want students to leave that high school setting feeling confident, knowing different avenues that they might need to go down to get different support systems. And oftentimes, students just need to have that knowledge. They might be questioning where to go. And so it's our responsibility as educators to make sure that they have this planning in place for when they graduate from high school. All right. So when we're working with students to help transition them to the next level, we have to think about unique talents and interests that they have, what they want in life right now, what's going on right now in their life, what do they want out of their life right now, and what are they looking at in the future. Not only a future as in like 1 or 2 years, maybe they want to go up to a 2-year college, maybe they want to go to a work study program, but what do they want in the future? Let's say 10 years down the road, how can we help them now in high school to get to that 10-year mark? What are some of life's demands that you can meet right now? And what are some barriers? Okay. And that sometimes is a difficult conversation to have with anybody because we don't want to talk about these obstacles that we're going to have to get around. But there are some for all of us in getting stuff that we want from school or from the community that you live in, and making any student aware of what those barriers might be and helping them look at different options to get around those barriers or obstacles is huge. And what are the options for preparing for me what I want to do in the future? Oftentimes, I should have stayed back on that last slide. Sometimes we don't need to be dream killers, but we need to be real with students about what potentially could be for them in the future. I had a lot of students that I served when they were in high school, and they wanted to be professional YouTubers or professional athletes. And I never crushed their dreams, and I never told them that wasn't reasonable for them. However, I just played out different scenarios and said, okay, that's fantastic. What are the steps that we need to do to get there? But what if this happens and you can't reach that? What's going to be your second option? And always making sure that they're aware that having different backup plans is beneficial in all aspects of our life. So transition planning starts with age-appropriate assessments and working with the student to figure out what they need from us as an educational facility and how we can get them the supports that they need. So all states require 2 different assessments when we're working with this IEP portion. And students who are on IEPs, it's just another assessment that goes along with the paperwork. But there has to be informal assessments and formal assessments. And formal assessments, the 2 most frequently used for districts around the country are the TPI, which is short for the Transition Planning Inventory, and the Enderle-Severson. I used the TPI at both schools that I taught at out in Idaho and also in Minnesota. But there are many others, but those are just the 2 most common that districts use. And then those informal assessments that we would complete with kids are interviews, just basic interview questions. The TPI, I know, produces an informal assessment that it provides you with questions that you should ask the student. But those interviews just consist of questions like, what type of job do you want to do when you're in the future? How well do you know how to budget money? Do you have a bank account? What are some extracurricular activities that you like to do? Do you know how to use the busing system in the town that you live in? Do you know how to get to different places? So on and so forth. Okay. There are 5 different areas that transition planning looks at. employment, recreation, leisure, home living, community. We have to look at just these different areas so that we can truly help support them in all these different aspects. Okay, so that post-secondary education, where do you want to go to school? Do you know how to go to the YMCA and get a membership there? Do you know how to cook food? Do you know how to go to the grocery store? Do you know different community events that you can go to? Do you know how to even apply for a job? These are all different areas that we work with students on to make sure that they are prepared as possible. So this next one would be making choices to do a Wednesday seating. And like I said, you're going to need to create your own Wacky Wednesday seating. So what I would have had you do is you had to choose one. If you were to choose, would you choose red? And if you did like the color red, you would go stand by the windows in our classroom, blue, bookshelf, wall, so on and so forth. And then that would have split you out. This goes along with the transition planning because kids have to make choices. And sometimes we want to do both, but we know that we have to pick one over the next. And so an activity like this, you could put in different jobs, and maybe they would be more interested in a job and they could figure out different aspects of their life that they would have to maybe make a difficult choice, but one that might benefit them. All right. This is just an overview of different transition services. Anybody who has an IEP can receive these transition services from age 16 through 21, or in some states, aged 14 through 21. They should begin right by their birthday, and they are updated and amended every year, just like the IEP meetings are. All of you will have to attend an IEP meeting at some point in your teaching career, especially if you are the core teachers. Okay, so those K through 5, K through 6 teachers, and then if you teach a specific subject, so maybe you're going to be an English teacher in the high school, and a student of yours has an IEP for writing or reading, you would be the main point of contact for that gen ed representation person there. I'm not going to continue to read this out loud, but this is just an overview of the transition services that are provided to students. Students with disabilities oftentimes graduate at 60%. Students without disabilities oftentimes graduate at about 80%. And these are just basic facts that you need to know. So looking at students who have disabilities, we have to make sure that we are ready to plan for them and assist them in graduating high school. There was a survey study that was completed over years after students had graduated who had disabilities and who didn't. And there's just some data points that are listed there. I'm not going to read them to you. You can read them out loud. But it is a known fact through data that has been collected through research that adults with disabilities are significantly more likely to live in poverty than those who do not. A summary of performance is the very final key when students are graduating, or is the final aspect that a special education teacher fills out for students who have IEPs. This is the final report card per se, if you want to look at it that way. But it summarizes everything that a student has worked for on their IEP, shows where they currently are. This documentation is generally brought to a college with them if they choose to go there. And it's wonderful if kids can run and help write their summary of performance. Generally, they're better able to advocate for themselves in their next few years of life. All right. Figure 15.4, open your books to page 509. When you're looking at the whole aspect of transition planning, It truly begins in kindergarten, and it's amazing to see the transition skills that you can work on with kindergartners. And I know you might think, what? We're preparing kids in kindergarten for when they're already out of high school in their senior year. But it truly is. It's that framework of building from the bottom up, and how it takes a full village to raise these children. So I just want you to look at these questions. Stay on this page for a little bit. Go look at page 509 in your book, on figure 15.4, and answer these questions. Answer these questions out loud. I'm going to go on to the next slide, but pause the video right here. Go to page 509 and look at these different questions and the figure that's there. All right. Okay. So when we're working with students on their transition goals, and this is for all kids, okay? I think we need to help all students be ready to transition on from that high school world into secondary ed or into the work field. The ultimate transition goal for anybody is to just have a better quality of life. There are different resources that you can use as special education teachers, as education majors in general, to helping students have a better quality of life. And these are different resources that you can go click on. South SD My Life is probably one of my most favorite to look at. I wish every state had an opportunity like this to help students start with resumes is in high school and have access to that. Fantastic. But anyway, these are different resources that you can go to see how different companies assist people in transitioning. And then these are just my three, oh my goodness, I don't even see you guys and I'm already starting to tear up a little bit. These are my three final thoughts on that I need to share with you, okay? So I want you to never say impossible as a teacher. I want you to never, ever give up if something becomes hard. I want you to make sure that if you need something, that you go get it. Okay. Don't ever give up if something becomes hard, and make sure to always keep an inspirational file. You'll need that happy folder is what I call it. I have letters from my very first year of teaching that sometimes I pop open and I just read to bring a smile back to my face. So I look forward to seeing all that you accomplish. Please come visit me in the fall. I can't wait to see everything that you do, and I can't wait to watch you graduate from the University of Sioux Falls.